The cost and the fragrance. While Jesus was in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. Matthew 26, verses 6 and 7. While he was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. Mark 14 and verse 3. When one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. A woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, so she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. As she stood behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. Luke 7, verses 36 to 38. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. John 12, verses 1 to 3. Hello, my friend. This is Clyde. You guessed it right. We are going to talk about the extravagant act performed by this woman and directed towards Jesus. The Bible gives us 4 accounts of an act of demonstrative worship by one woman in a room where Jesus was with many other guests. Each account gives a significant detail that we are going to highlight. The Matthew account tells us that the woman came to him. This indicates that she was clear about who was going to be recognized. It was Jesus. Mark's account said practically the same thing as Matthew, but on closer examination, Mark told us that the expensive perfume was made of pure nard. Nard is an imported high-quality oil used mainly for anointing. The Luke account spoke about what she did. She stood behind Jesus at his feet, weeping, and began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. That is quite an extravagant act of adoration. John gave us one fine detail that the others did not mention. John said, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. What shall we make of all this? One story told by 4 different writers with what might seem like minor details, but we cannot ignore them. We could put the whole story together as follows. Jesus was in a house having dinner with a group of persons. A woman came into the room. Some say it was Mary Magdalene. John said it was Mary, Lazarus' sister. Regardless, this Mary came into the room with an expensive bottle of perfume, headed straight to Jesus and poured it on him. She wept. She wiped his feet with her hair. I invite you to the Old Testament book of Leviticus, and we hear God saying, "When anyone among you brings an offering to the Lord, bring as your offering an animal from either the herd or the flock." It goes on to say that you must present it at the entrance to the tent of meeting so that it will be acceptable to the Lord. You are to lay your hand on the head of the burnt offering, and it will be accepted on your behalf to make atonement for you. One more thing from that first chapter of Leviticus. There were specifics based on where the animal came from. If the offering is a burnt offering from the herd, you are to offer a male animal without defect. Leviticus 1 and verse 2. If the offering is a burnt offering from the flock, from either the sheep or the goat, it is to be a male without defect. Verse 10 of Leviticus 1. If it is a burnt offering of birds, you are to offer a dove or a young pigeon. In each case, there are details how the sacrifice is conducted, but whether it is a bird, a sheep, a goat, or from the herd, pay attention to this statement. It occurs 3 times in Leviticus 1. It is a burnt offering, a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. Leviticus 1 verse 9, verse 13, and verse 17. The woman in the 4 gospel accounts came to offer a sacrifice of worship to Jesus. She bought it with her own money, a bottle of expensive perfume. She came and she poured it on Jesus, every last drop of it. She wept during the whole thing. Then she dried his feet with her hair. This woman offered a sacrifice that cost a lot of money, a sacrifice that cost her dignity. But the sacrifice was special. It had a sweet fragrance. The fragrance filled the room. The aroma was pleasing to the Lord. She reproduced the act of worship in Leviticus with a sacrifice with the same result, like God told the priest to teach the nation of Israel. At the end of a sacrifice that must cost you something, the aroma must be pleasing to God. Let's come closer home. We are God's children, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. How has your worship been of late? I'm talking your worship in private or in church. When we go to church on Sundays or whichever day you go to church, what is it that you bring to the house of God? Oh, some of us wear nice clothes and we look good. But what about the worship that you bring? Is it pure? Or do you just come in and sing along, but with no meaning? Are you focused solely on Jesus, or are you distracted by who's in church or by the length of the service or other trivia? Does your worship cost you anything, or is it just a canned version of what you do each time with no sincerity, no value attached to it? Does the fragrance of your worship ascend to God as a sweet aroma? The throne room of heaven should be filled with the fragrance of your worship, fresh worship, authentic worship, worship that is reserved only for Christ. After all, He loved us and gave Himself for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. Ephesians 1 and 5 and verse 1. My friends, this woman whose story is in all 4 gospel accounts challenges us to do better. Leave the stale, cheap worship at home. I have to clean up my worship and make sure it is a valuable worship. I'm not imitating others. Bring a fresh worship each time we come to the house of the Lord or when we get alone with Him in private worship. Let us do as David says. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. Psalm 19 and verse 14. The cost of your worship and the fragrance from your worship matter to the Lord who we worship.